The lights on the control panel blinked in steady rhythm as Dr. Lisa Morgan sat at her desk in the communications center. She had been working the night shift on Aurora's edge for 3 months now, and most nights were quiet. The space station orbited far from Earth, watching for signals from distant stars. Tonight felt different, though. Her equipment kept picking up something strange. "There it is again," she said to herself, adjusting the dials on her console. The signal was weak and broken, like someone trying to talk through static. She had heard it twice before in the past hour, but each time it faded before she could understand it. Lisa called up to the command center. "Commander Peterson, I'm getting something weird down here. Can you come take a look?" Jake Peterson had been drinking coffee and reading reports when Lisa's call came through. He was a tall man with graying hair who had spent 20 years in space before taking command of Aurora's Edge. "On my way," he said, setting down his cup. When Jake arrived at the communication center, he found Lisa staring at her screens with deep focus. "What do you have for me?" he asked. "Listen to this." Lisa played back the recording she had made. Strange sounds filled the room, like voices speaking in a language neither of them had ever heard. The signal crackled and popped, making it hard to understand. "That's definitely not human," Jake said. "How long have you been getting this?" "About an hour. It comes and goes, but it's getting stronger." Lisa looked up at him. "Commander, I think someone is trying to send us a message." Jake felt his heart beat faster. In all his years in space, he had never encountered alien life. Humanity had found empty planets and dead ruins, but never living beings trying to communicate. "Can you clean it up? Make it clearer? I can try." "Give me a few hours." Lisa's fingers moved quickly over her keyboard. "I'll run it through every filter we have." Jake nodded. "I'll be in my office. Call me the moment you have something." The next 6 hours passed slowly. Lisa worked without stopping, using every tool she had to clean up the signal. She ran the sounds through computers that could separate different voices, remove background noise, and even guess at missing parts. Slowly, the message began to make sense. When she finally understood what she was hearing, Lisa's hands shook. As she called Commander Peterson, "Jake, you need to get down here right now. And you might want to call Captain Bell, too." Minutes later, both men stood behind Lisa's chair as she played the cleaned-up message. The voice that came through the speakers was clearly not human, but the words were now clear enough to understand. "To any civilization receiving this transmission, we are the Zephyrian Collective. Our worlds are under attack by a powerful enemy, called the Cronus Dominion. They have already destroyed 3 of our planets and killed millions of our people. We have tried to negotiate with them, but they will not listen. They only want to take our resources and destroy our homes." The alien voice paused, and they could hear what sounded like explosions in the background. "We are not asking for much. We know that other civilizations have their own problems and cannot risk war for strangers. We only hope that someone might share knowledge of defensive strategies or tactical advice. Perhaps you have faced similar enemies and learned how to protect your people. Any help you could provide would be treasured by our survivors." The message ended with coordinates and technical details about how to respond. The 3 humans stood in silence for a long moment. Finally, Captain Bell spoke. "They're asking for military advice. Against an enemy that destroys planets," Jake added quietly. "Lisa, how far away are they?" She checked her instruments. "About 40 light years. The message is 6 months old. By the time it reached us, 6 months." Jake rubbed his chin. These Cronus could have killed more of them by now. Ryan Bell was the captain of the patrol ship Iron Will, and he had fought in several battles during humanity's expansion into space. "Commander, we need to report this to Earth Command immediately. This is bigger than our authority," Jake agreed. "Lisa, send everything you have to Admiral Hudson on Earth. Include your analysis and the technical data. Mark it Priority 1. "Already." "Done," Lisa said. I sent it an hour ago. Good thinking. Jake looked at the star charts on the wall. 40 light years. That's far, but not impossible to reach. You're thinking of going there? Ryan asked. I'm thinking these Zephyrians asked for help. They're being murdered by something called the Cronus Dominion, and they're desperate enough to send messages to complete strangers. Ryan understood his commander's expression. Jake, you know what happened the last time humans found someone committing genocide? I remember the Tau Ceti incident very well. We didn't just give advice then either. Jake looked at both of them. Humanity has never been good at standing by while innocent people die. Lisa pulled up more data on her screen. The signal is getting weaker. I think they're moving away from us, probably running from this Cronus. Or they're all dead, Ryan said grimly. No, Jake shook his head. They're still broadcasting. I can feel it. Lisa, keep monitoring. If you get any more transmissions, record everything. What do you think Earth Command will say? Lisa asked. Jake smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. I think they'll say the same thing they always say when someone asks humans for help. He paused. They'll ask how fast we can get there. Ryan looked confused. But the Zephyrians only asked for advice. They specifically said they didn't want us to risk war. That's the problem, Jake replied. They don't understand humans very well. When someone asks us for help, we don't just give advice. We show up, we get involved, we fix the problem. Even if it means fighting this Cronus Dominion. Lisa asked. Jake walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an alien civilization was dying while asking for nothing more than suggestions, especially then, he said. The Zephyrians are about to learn something about humanity. We take requests for help very seriously. 2 days later, the response from Earth Command arrived. Jake read it twice before calling his senior staff together. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, we're going to Zephyrian space. Admiral Hudson is assembling a task force. Our orders are to assess the situation and determine if the Cronus Dominion represents a threat to galactic peace. And if they do? Ryan asked. Jake looked at his friend. Then we remind them that humans don't like bullies. 3 weeks after the message from the Zephyrians reached Earth, Admiral Kate Hudson stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the stars change as her fleet dropped out of hyperspace. 27 ships had made the journey to Zephyrian space. More than any alien species had ever seen from humanity at one time. Admiral, we're getting multiple signals from the system ahead, reported Lieutenant Amy Carter from her station. Some are Zephyrian, but there are others. Different technology. Kate nodded. That'll be the Cronus. Colonel Adams, are your people ready? Colonel Steve Adams looked up from his tactical display. Marine recon teams are standing by. Dr. Grant has his analysis equipment ready too. We'll know what we're dealing with soon enough. The human fleet moved carefully into the Zephyrian system. What they found made even experienced military officers stop and stare. 3 planets that should have been green and blue were now nothing but floating rocks and metal debris. Massive alien ships, each the size of a city, moved between the wreckage like giant insects picking clean a carcass. My God, whispered Amy Carter, they really do crack planets open. Dr. Paul Grant was already taking readings with his instruments. Admiral, those ships are designed for one purpose. They break apart planets and suck out the core materials. I'm reading massive energy signatures from their mining equipment. Kate studied the scene through her ship's cameras. How long does it take them to destroy a world? Based on the debris patterns, maybe 2 weeks per planet. They're very thorough. Paul's voice was grim. Admiral, the energy readings I'm getting suggest they've done this many times before. Their ships are old, well used. A new signal came through the communication system. The voice was the same one Lisa Morgan had first heard weeks ago, but now it sounded weaker, more desperate. Unknown ships, This is Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrian Collective. Please identify yourselves. We are grateful that someone has responded to our message, but we must warn you that the Cronus ships are very dangerous. Kate stepped forward. Ambassador Veltar, this is Admiral Kate Hudson of the Human Federation. We received your request for assistance. We're here to help. There was a long pause before the alien replied. Humans? We did not expect anyone to come in person. We only asked for advice about defensive strategies. You should not risk your ships here. Kate looked at Colonel Adams, who shrugged. Ambassador, we don't give advice from a distance. We came to see the situation for ourselves. Can you meet with us? We need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. Yes, of course, but please be careful. The Cronus have been patrolling this system for weeks. They attack anything that moves. Kate turned to her crew. Set course for the Zephyrian fleet. Colonel, I want your best people ready for first contact. Dr. Grant, start analyzing everything you can about Cronus technology. 2 hours later, Kate found herself sitting across from Ambassador Veltar in the meeting room of a Zephyrian ship. The alien looked like a tall, thin person covered in silver fur, with large eyes that seemed to hold great sadness. Around the table sat other Zephyrian leaders, all looking tired and afraid. Admiral Hudson, Veltar began, we are grateful that your people responded to our transmission. But we must ask again, why did you bring so many warships? We only requested tactical advice. Kate exchanged glances with Colonel Adams before answering. Ambassador, when humans receive a call for help, we respond fully. We don't offer advice and walk away. We stay until the problem is solved. The Zephyrians looked confused. One of them, an elderly female named Elder Quintora, spoke up. But surely you cannot mean to fight the Cronus Dominion? They have hundreds of ships, and they have been conquering species for thousands of years. Colonel Adams leaned forward. Elder, how many species have actually fought back against them? Fought back? Veltar seemed surprised by the question. Species do not fight the Cronus. They are too powerful. Most civilizations either flee to other star systems or try to negotiate. And how do those negotiations usually go? Kate asked. They do not go well, admitted Veltar quietly. The Cronus see negotiation as weakness. They take what they want and destroy the rest. Dr. Grant looked up from his datapad. Admiral, I've been analyzing their ship designs and behavior patterns. The Cronus appear to be apex predators. They've never faced serious resistance. Their tactics are based on overwhelming force against weak opponents. Kate nodded. Ambassador, we need you to understand something about humans. We have a saying, we don't negotiate with bullies. We stop them. Stop them? Elder Quintara's voice rose. Admiral, with respect, they have destroyed 3 of our worlds. Millions of our people are dead. How can anyone stop such power? Colonel Adams pulled up holographic images of the destroyed planets. Elder, this is exactly why we can't walk away. The Cronus aren't just attacking you. They're committing genocide. They're wiping out entire civilizations for profit. Veltar looked around the table at his fellow Zephyrians, then back at the humans. We appreciate your concern, truly. But what can even your impressive fleet do against such an enemy? You have 27 ships. They have hundreds. Kate smiled, but it wasn't a comfortable expression. Ambassador, these 27 ships are just the assessment team. If we determine that the Cronus represent a threat to galactic peace, Earth will send more ships. How many more? Asked Elder Quintara. As many as it takes, Kate replied simply. The room fell silent. Finally, Veltar spoke again. Admiral, we must ask directly. What exactly are you planning? Colonel Adams answered. We're planning to evaluate the Cronus threat, rescue as many of your people as possible, and then eliminate the threat permanently. Eliminate? Veltar's eyes widened. You mean to destroy their entire fleet? If necessary, Kate said. Ambassador, you sent a message asking for help because your people were being murdered. Well, humans take that kind of request very seriously. When someone asks us for help against genocide, we don't give advice. We end the genocide. Dr. Grant looked up from his analysis. Admiral, I'm reading massive Cronus fleet movements heading this way. It looks like they've detected our ships. Kate stood up. Ambassador, you and your people need to prepare for evacuation. Get every civilian ship you have ready to leave this system. Evacuation? But where will we go? Veltar asked. Somewhere safe while we deal with the Cronus, Kate replied. Colonel, signal the fleet. Battle stations. As the humans prepared to leave, Veltar called out desperately, Admiral Hudson, please understand. We never asked you to fight a war for us. We only wanted advice. Kate paused at the doorway. Ambassador, I understand perfectly. But you need to understand something about humans. When you ask us for help, you get all of our help. Not just advice, not just support. You get everything we have. But why? Elder Quintara asked. Why would you risk so much for strangers? Kate looked back at the frightened aliens. Because someone has to. Because it's the right thing to do. And because humans don't abandon people who need help. As the humans returned to their ships, Veltar turned to Elder Quintara. What have we done? We only asked for tactical suggestions. I think, the elderly Zephyrian replied slowly, we have learned that humans do not think the same way we do. They do not give small help when big help is needed. Outside their ship, the human fleet was already moving into battle formation, preparing to face an enemy that had never been seriously challenged. The Zephyrians were about to witness something their galaxy had never seen before, humans at war. General Mike Torres looked out the window of his command ship as more human vessels dropped out of hyperspace every few minutes. It had been 1 week since Admiral Hudson's report reached Earth, and the response was bigger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. 400 human ships now filled the space around the remaining Zephyrian worlds. General, the last transport group just arrived, reported Captain Beth Rogers from her station. That brings our total fleet strength to 412 vessels. Mike nodded as he watched massive human dreadnoughts position themselves between the Cronus forces and the Zephyrian planets. And how are our alien friends handling the sight of our fleet? They seem confused, sir. Ambassador Veltar has asked to speak with you again. Mike had spoken with the Zephyrian leader 3 times already, and each conversation was the same. The aliens could not understand why humans had brought such a massive force in response to their simple request for advice. Put him through, Mike. Saad, Veltar's worried face appeared on the main screen. General Torres, we must protest again. Your fleet is enormous. We only asked for tactical suggestions, not for you to start a war with the Cronus Dominion. Ambassador, Mike replied patiently, we're not starting a war. We're ending one. The Cronus have been murdering your people for months. That stops now. But sir, you do not understand the Cronus. They have conquered dozens of species over thousands of years. They do not negotiate. They do not retreat. If you challenge them, they will bring their entire empire to crush you. Mike smiled grimly. Good, let them come. It'll save us the trouble of hunting them down later. Veltar looked shocked. General, are you saying you intend to fight their entire empire? If that's what it takes to stop the genocide, yes. The Zephyrian ambassador was quiet for a long moment. We never imagined any species would do such a thing for strangers. Why are you risking so much? Because it's what humans do, Mike replied simply. When someone asks us for help against genocide, we don't give advice and walk away. We solve the problem. After ending the call, Mike turned to Captain Rogers. Beth, how are the evacuation operations going? Captain Rogers had been leading special operations teams to rescue Zephyrian civilians from planets about to be attacked by the Cronus. We've pulled 2 million civilians off 4 different worlds in the past week. The Cronus don't seem to notice. Our small ships moving around behind their lines. Good. What about the new weapons? Chief Engineer Dan Parker looked up from his workstation. The anti-planet cracker devices are ready for field testing. We've designed them to overload the Cronus. Mining equipment from the inside. Mike studied the tactical displays showing Cronus positions throughout the system. Their massive world cracker ships moved slowly between planets, protected by smaller warships. The aliens had no idea that human engineers had been studying their technology for weeks, looking for weaknesses. Dan, explain to me again how these planet crackers work. The engineer pulled up a detailed image of a Cronus ship. They use massive energy beams to break apart a planet's crust. Then they send smaller ships down to suck up the valuable materials from the core. The problem is, their energy systems are linked throughout the ship. If we can overload one section, the whole thing should explode. And you think our people can get close enough to plant these devices? Captain Rogers answered. Sir, my teams have been practicing infiltration runs for days. The Cronus don't expect stealth attacks. They're used to fighting enemies who either run away or meet them head-on. Mike nodded. They're about to learn that humans fight differently. He turned to his communications officer. Get me Admiral Hudson. Kate Hudson's face appeared on screen from her flagship. General, the Cronus have been moving more ships into this system all week. We're now facing over 200 enemy vessels. Are you worried, Admiral? Kate smiled. Not particularly. Our ships are designed for actual combat. Theirs are designed for attacking defenseless planets. There's a difference. Mike looked at the tactical displays again. Kate, I want you to know that this is bigger than just saving the Zephyrians. If we let the Cronus continue their expansion, they'll eventually reach human space. I understand, sir. This is about sending a message to the entire galaxy. No more genocide. No more species being wiped out for profit. Exactly. How long before you're ready to begin operations? My ships are in position now. Beth's teams are ready to infiltrate the planet crackers. We can begin whenever you give the order. Mike thought about the millions of Zephyrians who had already died, and the millions more who would die if the Cronus weren't stopped. Begin Operation Guardian Shield. Show them what happens when you threaten innocent people in human space. Across the human fleet, soldiers and spacers prepared for battle. They knew they were outnumbered, but they also knew they were fighting for something the Cronus could never understand. They were fighting to protect people they had never met, simply because those people had asked for help. On the Zephyrian ships, Ambassador Veltar watched the human fleet begin to move. Elder Quintara, I think we have made a terrible mistake. What do you mean? Asked the elderly Zephyrian. We asked the humans for advice about fighting the Cronus. Instead, we seem to have started the largest war our galaxy has ever seen. Elder Quintara looked at the hundreds of human warships moving into attack formation. Perhaps we did not make a mistake. Perhaps we finally found someone willing to stand up to bullies. But the cost, Elder, so many will die. Yes, she replied sadly. But if the humans succeed, no more species will have to face the Cronus alone. Perhaps that is worth the price. On his command ship, General Torres received reports from across the fleet. Captain Rogers and her teams were approaching the Cronus planet crackers. Admiral Hudson's ships were moving to engage the enemy fleet. Engineer Parker's new weapons were ready for combat testing. Sir, reported his communications officer, we're receiving surrender offers from 3 Cronus commanders. They're offering to withdraw from this system if we let them leave. Mike looked at the tactical display showing the destroyed Zephyrian worlds. Tell them that surrender is not acceptable. Tell them that humans do not make deals with genocidal murderers. What if they threaten to call in their entire empire? Then tell them to make that call. We'll be ready." The communications officer looked surprised. "Sir, their empire could have thousands of ships." Mike Torres looked out at his fleet of 400 human vessels, each one crewed by people who had volunteered to travel 40 light years to protect aliens they had never met. "Then we'll build more ships, we'll recruit more crews. We'll do whatever it takes. But sir, why go so far for the Zephyrians?" Mike turned to face his officer. "Because they asked for help. Because genocide is wrong no matter who the victims are. And because humans keep their promises." He paused. "The Zephyrians asked us to help them survive. We promised we would. That's exactly what we're going to do." In the distance, the first explosions lit up space as human infiltration teams struck the Cronus planet crackers. The largest war in galactic history had begun, all because a peaceful species had sent a simple message asking for advice. War Prime Thruckener stood on the command deck of his massive flagship, watching the strange new ships that had appeared in Zephyrian space. The alien commander was 12 feet tall, with thick armor plating covering his body and 4 arms ending in sharp claws. He had led Cronus fleets for 50 years, and had never met an enemy that didn't run or surrender when faced with his forces. "War Prime," reported his tactical officer, "the unknown ships are not responding to our demands for surrender. They appear to be attacking our planet crackers." Thrakener's eyes narrowed. "Attacking? What species dares to attack the Cronus?" "Dominion? They call themselves humans, War Prime. They have over 400 ships." 400. Thrakener laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "We have conquered species with thousands of ships. These humans must be very foolish to challenge us with so few vessels." On the human flagship, Admiral Hudson watched as the first phase of the battle began. Captain Rogers and her teams had successfully infiltrated 3 Cronus planet crackers, and the massive ships were beginning to explode from the inside. "Admiral," reported Lieutenant Amy Carter, "the Cronus fleet is moving to engage us. 200 ships, including their flagship." Kate nodded. "Signal all ships. Engage the enemy. Protect the evacuation transports at all costs." "Lieutenant Commander." Alex Turner sat in the cockpit of his fighter, leading a squadron of 30 small ships toward the Cronus flagship. "Viper Squadron, stay close. We're going to hit them where they don't expect it." "Commander," came a voice over the radio, "that ship is the size of a city. How are we supposed to damage it?" Alex smiled grimly. "We're not going to damage it from the outside. We're going inside." The human fighters dove toward the massive Cronus ship, dodging energy beams that could destroy them in one hit. Alex led his squadron through the ship's defensive fire, losing 3 fighters in the first minute of the attack. On the surface of Zephyr Prime, Sergeant Maya Johnson crouched behind a pile of rubble as Cronus ground forces advanced toward the civilian evacuation site. Her heavy plasma cannon was designed to destroy enemy vehicles, and she had been using it to hold off Cronus soldiers for 3 hours. "Sergeant," called Private Tony Martinez over the radio, "we've got more Cronus troops coming from the east. At least 200 of them." Maya looked at her ammunition counter. She had enough power for maybe 10 more shots. "Tony, how many civilians are still waiting for pickup?" "About 5,000, Sergeant. The transport ships are coming as fast as they can." Maya stood up and aimed her weapon at the approaching Cronus. "Soldiers, then we hold this position, no matter what." The Cronus soldiers were 8 feet tall and covered in natural armor, but Maya's plasma cannon could punch through their protection. She fired shot after shot, each one dropping a Cronus warrior, but more kept coming. Back in space, the battle between the main fleets had begun. Cronus ships fired massive energy beams designed to crack planets, but human ships were smaller and faster. They darted between the enemy vessels, hitting them with precise attacks on their weak points. War Prime Thrakener watched in confusion as his forces struggled against the human fleet. How are they fighting so effectively? Their ships are tiny compared to ours. His tactical officer looked worried. War Prime, they are not fighting like other species. They do not retreat when we damage their ships. They continue attacking even when their vessels are destroyed. What do you mean? Watch, War Prime. The officer showed him a recording of a human ship that had been badly damaged. Instead of retreating, the ship had rammed directly into a Cronus vessel, destroying both ships. They sacrificed themselves to damage us. Thrakener had never seen such behavior. In every previous war, enemy species had tried to preserve their ships and soldiers. When faced with certain death, they surrendered or fled. These humans seemed to welcome death if it meant hurting the Cronus. Lieutenant Commander Turner's fighter squadron had fought their way inside the Cronus flagship. Flying through the ship's corridors, they attacked the internal systems that kept the massive vessel operating. Viper Leader called one of his pilots. "I'm hit. Engine's gone. I'm going to ram the power core." "Negative, Viper 7. Eject in. We'll pick you up." "No, sir. This is the only way to stop this ship. Tell my family I did my job." Alex watched helplessly as Viper 7's fighter crashed into the flagship's main power system. The explosion tore through 3 decks of the ship, but it also knocked out the vessel's main weapons. On the ground, Sergeant Johnson was down too. Her last shots when she heard the sound of human transport ships arriving. "Tony, get those civilians loaded now. I can't hold much longer. Sergeant, you need to fall back. There are too many of them." Maya looked at the approaching Cronus soldiers, then at the thousands of Zephyrian civilians still waiting for rescue. "Negative. I hold this line until every civilian is safe." She fired her last shot, then picked up her rifle. The Cronus were only 50 yards away now, but she could see the transport ships loading the final groups of refugees. War Prime Threkener received reports from across the battlefield. Half of his planet crackers had been destroyed by human infiltration teams. His flagship was badly damaged and could no longer crack planets. Worst of all, the humans had rescued millions of Zephyrian civilians that should have been easy targets. War Prime. His officer reported, "Our ground forces on Zephyr Prime are requesting reinforcements. They report that human soldiers will not retreat even when facing impossible odds." "What do you mean?" "They say the humans fight until they die, War Prime. They do not surrender. They do not run away. They fight to protect the Zephyrian civilians, even when it costs their lives." Thrakener looked at the tactical display showing his losses. In 6 hours of fighting, he had lost 60 ships and thousands of soldiers. The humans had lost fewer ships, but they had saved over 4 million Zephyrian civilians. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a message from the human fleet commander." Admiral Hudson's face appeared on the main screen. She looked tired but determined. "War Prime Thrakener, this is Admiral Hudson of the Human Federation. You have committed genocide against the Zephyrian people. We are here to stop you," Thrakener roared in anger. "Human, you cannot defeat the Cronus Dominion. We have conquered this galaxy for thousands of years. We will crush you like all the others." Kate's expression didn't change. "War Prime, you've never fought humans before. We don't conquer. We don't enslave. We don't commit genocide, but we do stop those who do. You have won this battle, but we will call for reinforcements. The entire Cronus Empire will come to destroy your species." Kate nodded. "Good. That will save us the trouble of hunting you down system by system. When your empire arrives, we'll be ready." The transmission ended, leaving Thrakener staring at a blank screen. For the first time in his life, he felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. He was afraid of an enemy that fought like no other species he had ever encountered. On Zephyr Prime, the last transport ship lifted off with the final group of civilians. Sergeant Johnson had held her position until the end, dying with her rifle in her hands and a pile of Cronus bodies around her. The Battle of Zephyr Prime was over. The humans had saved the Zephyrian civilians and destroyed most of the Cronus fleet, but both sides knew this was only the beginning. The real war was yet to come. 6 months after the Battle of Zephyr Prime, the galaxy had changed forever. Admiral Hudson stood on the observation deck of the new human space station built in Zephyrian space, watching as construction ships worked around the clock. The station would serve as the headquarters for the Terran Protection Fleet, humanity's answer to the continuing Cronus threat. "Admiral," called Captain Rogers as she approached with a datapad, "we just received word from the Antares sector. Another species, called the Helix Collective, has asked for our help. They say the Cronus are attacking their worlds." Kate took the report and read it quickly. "How far away are they?" 60 light years from here. The message says they've already lost 2 planets. Kate nodded. "Signal Fleet Command. Tell them to prepare Task Force 7 for immediate deployment. We're not letting another genocide happen on our watch." The human response to calls for help had become legendary across the galaxy. When the Cronus attacked the peaceful Trillan Republic, human ships arrived within 3 weeks and drove them off. When they threatened the mining colonies of the Vegan Confederacy, a human task force destroyed an entire Cronus battle group. Each victory made other species realize that humanity was serious about protecting innocent life. Ambassador Veltar walked onto the observation deck, moving slowly as he recovered from injuries suffered during the evacuation of his homeworld. The Zephyrian leader had spent months trying to understand why humans had committed so much to save his people. "Admiral Hudson," he said quietly, "I have received reports from across the galaxy. 17 different species have now requested human protection from the Cronus. How do your people plan to defend so many worlds?" Kate looked out at the human ships moving through the system. What had started as a single fleet of 400 vessels had grown into the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen. "We'll do what we always do, Ambassador. We'll build more ships and train more crews. But surely there must be limits to what humanity can accomplish. You cannot protect every species in the galaxy." Kate turned to face the alien diplomat. "Ambassador, 6 months ago you sent a message asking for advice about fighting the Cronus. You thought you were asking for suggestions. Instead, you started something that will change this galaxy forever." Veltar looked confused. "I do not understand." "You proved that someone would stand up to the Cronus. For thousands of years, species either ran from them or died fighting alone. But you reached out to strangers and asked for help. That changed everything." Captain Rogers pointed to the tactical display showing human fleet positions throughout the local region. "Admiral, we now have 60 task forces operating in this part of the galaxy. Each one is hunting Cronus fleets and protecting threatened worlds." Kate nodded. "And each victory makes more species willing to ask for help instead of facing extinction alone." On the Cronus homeworld, War Prime Throkanor stood before the Dominion Council, reporting on 6 months of continuous defeats. The massive alien leaders listened in growing anger as he described how human forces had systematically destroyed Cronus fleets across dozens of star systems. "War Prime," growled High Commander Vashka, "explain to us how a species we had never heard of 6 months ago has managed to drive our forces from 23 star systems." Thrakener's scarred face showed his frustration. "High Commander, the humans fight unlike any species we have ever encountered. They do not retreat when faced with superior numbers. They do not surrender when their ships are damaged. They continue fighting until they achieve their objectives or until they die. Surely their losses must be weakening them?" "No, High Commander. For every ship they lose, 2 more appear to take its place. For every soldier who dies, 5 more volunteer to replace him. Their commitment to protecting other species appears to be unlimited." Another council member spoke up. What do they want from us? Territory, resources, tribute? Threckener shook his head. They want nothing, High Commander. They simply want us to stop attacking other species. They have offered to end hostilities. If we agree to cease all expansion and return conquered worlds to their original inhabitants. The council chamber erupted in angry roars. High Commander Vashka slammed his massive fist on the table. Return conquered worlds, cease expansion. The Cronus Dominion does not make deals with prey species. High Commander, Threckener said carefully. Perhaps we should consider their offer. Our losses have been severe. Entire battle groups have been destroyed. Some of our member worlds are beginning to question whether continuing this war is wise. Are you suggesting we surrender to these humans? I am suggesting that we may not be able to defeat them. They have shown capabilities we did not know existed. They fight not for territory or resources, but for principles we do not understand. Back in Zephyrian space, Dr. Paul Grant was completing his analysis of Cronus society after months of studying captured prisoners and equipment. He found Admiral Hudson in her office reviewing reports from human fleets operating throughout the galaxy. Admiral, he said, placing a thick report on her desk, I've finished my comprehensive study of Cronus culture and psychology. Kate looked up from her work. What did you find, Doctor? The Cronus Dominion is collapsing from within. Their entire social structure is based on continuous expansion and conquest. When that expansion stops, their society begins to fragment. Explain. Paul pulled up a chart showing Cronus territorial control over time. For 3,000 years, they've been growing larger by conquering weaker species. Their member worlds stay loyal because they share in the wealth from conquered territories. But we've cut off that flow of new resources. Kate studied the data. So by stopping their expansion, we're causing internal problems? Exactly. Our intelligence sources report that 15 Cronus member worlds have declared independence in the past month. Their empire is breaking apart. Kate smiled for the first time in weeks. Doctor, you're telling me that by protecting innocent species from genocide, we've accidentally destroyed the entire Cronus Empire. That appears to be the case, Admiral. By making conquest unprofitable, we've removed the foundation of their civilization. A communications officer entered the office. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Cronus High Command. They're requesting a meeting to discuss terms. Kate looked at Paul, then at the officer. Terms for what? They didn't specify, Admiral. But the transmission came from High Commander Vashka himself. Kate stood up and walked to the window, overlooking the busy spaceport where human ships arrive daily with supplies and reinforcements. Tell the High Commander that I'll meet with him. But make it clear that the only terms we'll discuss are the complete end of Cronus expansion and the return of all conquered worlds to their original inhabitants. And if he refuses? Kate looked out at her fleet, now grown to over 1,500. Ships with more arriving every week. Then we'll continue doing what we've been doing. Hunting down every Cronus fleet in the galaxy until they learn that genocide has consequences. Ambassador Veltar joined her at the window. Admiral, when my people sent that message 6 months ago, we never imagined it would lead to all this. Kate nodded. Ambassador, you taught the galaxy something important. You taught them that it's okay to ask for help. That someone will answer. That no species has to face extinction alone. And what have you taught the galaxy, Admiral? Kate watched as another human task force prepared to depart for a distant star system where the Cronus were threatening another peaceful species. We've taught them that bullies can be stopped, that genocide is not inevitable, and that when someone asks humans for help, we don't just offer advice. What do you offer? Kate smiled as she watched her ships disappear into hyperspace, carrying the promise of protection to species they had never met. We offer everything we have. We show up, we stay until the job is done, and we make sure that no one who asks for help ever has to face evil alone. In the distance, new distress signals were already reaching human listening posts from species facing threats across the galaxy. And as always, the human response was immediate and absolute. Message received. Help is on the way.